Nobody tells you that the first $10,000 is a completely different game from every dollar that comes after it. They tell you to save. They tell you to invest. They tell you compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And all of that is true. But what they skip, what almost every piece of financial advice skips entirely, is the specific, grinding, psychologically brutal difficulty of getting from zero to that first real milestone. Because the first $10,000 is not just a number. It is a test. It is a filter. It is the financial equivalent of the first mile of a marathon, where your lungs are burning and your legs are heavy, and every instinct in your body is screaming at you to stop, while people who are already at mile 22 are jogging past you looking effortless and telling you it gets easier. They are right. It does get easier. But that is the least useful thing you can say to someone who is still at mile 1. What actually helps is understanding exactly why mile 1 is so hard, what is really happening in your brain and your bank account during it, and what the specific moves are that get you through it without quitting. That is what today is. My name is Mike, and I spend a lot of time thinking about the early stages of wealth building, specifically the psychological and mathematical reality of those first months and years when progress feels invisible, the sacrifice feels enormous, and the finish line feels like a fantasy someone invented to sell you something. The first $10,000 is where most people quit, not because they lack discipline or intelligence or the desire to build something real, but because nobody prepared them honestly for what this phase actually feels like from the inside. And I want to do that today, because if you know what is coming, if you can recognize the specific obstacles for what they are, rather than taking them personally, you have a fighting chance of getting through them. And getting through them changes everything that comes after. Let's start with the math, because the math is actually the most demoralizing part of the early journey, and I think it is important to look at it directly rather than pretend it is not as bad as it is. When you have nothing saved, every dollar you put away represents an enormous percentage of your total savings. You save $50, and your savings went up by 50% if you had 100. You save $200, and it feels meaningful. But the absolute number is still tiny. And when you look at the target $10,000 and then look at what you managed to save this month, maybe 150, maybe 200, maybe 300. If you had a genuinely good month, the arithmetic is punishing. At $200 a month, $10,000 is 4 years away. 4 years of discipline and sacrifice for a number that most financial content treats as basically the starting line. That feeling that the effort is enormous relative to the result is not an illusion or a weakness. It is just the math of early saving. And it is genuinely hard. The reason this matters is that most people experience this math as a personal verdict rather than a phase. They feel like the slow progress means they are doing it wrong, or that wealth building simply is not available to them, or that the sacrifice is not worth the distance. And so they stop. They spend the $200 on something that delivers immediate satisfaction instead. And the clock resets, and the 4 years starts over. I want to paint this picture more vividly because I think it matters. Imagine two people, starting at the same point with the same income. Person A saves $200 a month without fail for 12 months, and then has an unexpected expense that wipes it out. They start again. Frustrating, but they are still in the game. Person B saves $200 for 3 months, spends it on something that felt important at the time, saves again for 2 months, spends it again, and repeats this cycle for 2 years. Both people feel like they are trying. Only one of them is actually moving. The difference is not talent or income. It is the decision to protect the accumulation phase, even when it is uncomfortable, even when the immediate alternative is tempting, even when 4 years feels like forever. Understanding that the grinding slowness of early saving is not a sign that something is wrong, it is just what this phase feels like for everyone, is the first and most important cognitive shift you need to make. There is a second mathematical reality at this stage that nobody talks about enough, and it is the complete absence of compounding. You have heard your whole life that compound interest is how wealth builds exponentially over time. And it is. But compounding requires a base. When your base is $400, the compounding is so small, it is essentially invisible. 7% annual return on $400 is $28 per year. That is not exciting. That is not a reason to sacrifice your social life and your morning coffee and your sense of normalcy. The exciting compounding, the kind that produces the hockey stick graph everybody shows you, only starts to feel real once you have a meaningful base. And that base takes time to build. The first $10,000 is the phase before compounding matters. It is pure accumulation, pure grinding. No tailwind, just you, your income, your expenses, and the gap between them. And that gap, saved and invested consistently, is the only engine available to you right now, which is hard, but it is also clarifying. Because it means the only variable that actually matters at this stage is your savings rate, not your investment returns, not your asset allocation. Just how much are you saving every month, and can you protect that number from every force in your life that wants to erode it? Now let me talk about the psychological forces, because I think they are actually more dangerous than the mathematical ones at this stage. The first and most powerful one is what behavioral economists call present bias, the almost universal human tendency to dramatically overweight immediate rewards relative to future ones. Saving money is, by definition, a trade of present satisfaction for future security. You are giving up something real and enjoyable today for something abstract and distant tomorrow. And your brain, which evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to prioritize the immediate and concrete over the distant and theoretical, fights this trade every single time. The pizza tonight is real. The financial security in 4 years is not real in any sensory, emotional, immediate sense. And so your brain keeps voting for the pizza. Not because you are weak, because you are human, and your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do in an environment it was not designed for. Knowing this does not eliminate the pull, but it does let you stop interpreting every moment of temptation as evidence that you are not cut out for this. You are not failing. You are experiencing the standard human neurological response to delayed gratification. Every person who has ever built wealth has fought this same fight. The practical implication of understanding present bias is this: you cannot win against it using willpower alone, because willpower is a depletable resource and present bias never gets tired. What you can do is remove the decision entirely. Automate the savings transfer so it happens the same day your income arrives, before your brain has any input on the matter. Make the default action saving rather than spending, because when saving is automatic and spending is the active choice, you are working with your psychology rather than against it. The same brain that fights you when you try to manually save every month becomes an ally when saving is just what happens without your involvement. The second psychological force is what I call the relativity trap, and this one is specifically vicious in the early stage. When your savings are small, every enjoyable thing you could spend money on feels enormous relative to them. A concert ticket for $80 is almost 1% of your entire $10,000 target. A weekend trip for $300 is 3% of the goal wiped out in 48 hours. A new piece of tech for $500 is 5% gone. When you are close to zero, every expenditure feels like it is setting you back significantly, because relative to your savings, it genuinely is. And this creates a specific kind of financial anxiety and resentment that makes the whole project feel joyless and punishing. The people who successfully build their first $10,000 almost always do it by reframing the comparison entirely. Instead of measuring purchases against the savings goal, they measure them against their income and their monthly savings target. Did you save your $300 this month? Yes. Did you also spend $80 on a concert that mattered to you? Also yes. Both things are true. Both are okay. The goal is not to eliminate spending. The goal is to protect the savings rate. Everything above that threshold is yours to use however you choose without guilt. Here is one that I find genuinely underappreciated and almost never discussed. The social cost of saving at this stage is disproportionately high. When you are building your first $10,000, you are almost certainly in your early to mid-20s, which is also the peak of social spending pressure in most people's lives. Weddings to attend, bachelorette parties in expensive cities, friend groups that go out regularly, colleague dinners, birthday celebrations. Social occasions have real financial price tags, and opting out consistently to protect your savings budget has a real social cost in relationships, in belonging, in the quiet but persistent fear that you are somehow missing the years you were supposed to be living freely. And unlike the invisible sacrifice of transferring money to a savings account, the social sacrifice is felt acutely and personally every single time. This is real. And it is one of the main reasons that building savings in your 20s feels so much harder than the math alone would suggest. The people who navigate this best are the ones who make specific, deliberate choices about which social spending matters deeply to them and protect that spending explicitly while cutting the social spending that is obligation rather than genuine connection. Not every birthday dinner requires the most expensive restaurant. Not every group trip requires the most expensive accommodation. The presence often matters more than the price. Saying yes to the thing while reshaping the cost of the thing is a skill, and it is one worth developing. Let me also talk about the income side of this equation, because I think too much of the early savings conversation is focused entirely on cutting expenses and not enough on the other lever. Your savings rate is a function of two variables: what comes in and what goes out. Most people, when they commit to building savings, immediately focus on the spending side. Cut the subscriptions. Cook at home. Skip the trip, all legitimate. But there is a ceiling to how much you can cut before the discipline required becomes unsustainable, and the quality of your life degrades below a threshold you can maintain long term. The income lever, by contrast, has no ceiling. An extra $200 a month from a side project, freelance work, selling things you no longer need, picking up additional hours, that $200 accelerates your timeline without requiring you to take anything away from your current life. It adds rather than subtracts. And psychologically, earning your way to the goal feels entirely different from restricting your way to it. One builds momentum and confidence. The other builds resentment. If you are genuinely stuck, if the math between your income and your essential expenses leaves very little gap to save, then the spending cuts conversation is secondary. The primary conversation is about income. Even a temporary, imperfect, unglamorous additional income source can change the timeline dramatically. $400 a month in additional income, saved entirely, cuts the time to $10,000 almost in half, compared to saving $200 a month from cutting alone. The fastest path to the first milestone is almost always a combination of modest spending discipline and aggressive income creativity. And I want to say one more thing about the income conversation that I think gets lost. Increasing your income during the early savings phase does something beyond just improving the math. It changes the emotional experience of saving entirely. When you are saving $200 a month out of a tight budget, every dollar saved feels like a sacrifice. When you earn an extra $300 through a side project and put it directly into savings, it does not feel like sacrifice at all. It feels like progress. It feels like offense rather than defense. And playing financial offense, actively creating resources rather than just rationing existing ones, produces a completely different psychological state than grinding through spending cuts alone. Both matter. But if you can only do one thing to break out of the early savings grind faster, finding ways to earn more will almost always move the needle more dramatically and more sustainably than finding ways to spend less. Now I want to tell you something about what actually happens when you hit $10,000. Because I think it is important to understand what you are really building toward, and it is not just the number. When you reach $10,000 saved and invested, something shifts that has nothing to do with the math. The psychological relationship you have with money changes. You stop feeling like someone who is trying to be financially responsible, and you start feeling like someone who actually is. The identity shifts. And identity is enormously powerful in financial behavior, because people act consistently with who they believe themselves to be. When you believe you are someone who manages money well, who saves consistently, who is building something real, you make different decisions. Small decisions that you don't even notice consciously. You pause slightly longer before impulse purchases. You feel slightly differently about the automatic savings transfer each month. You think slightly differently about income opportunities. None of this is dramatic. All of it compounds. The $10,000 milestone is not just an account balance. It is proof, concrete, numerical, undeniable proof that you can do this. And that proof changes how you show up to every financial decision that comes after it. I have spoken to dozens of people who describe hitting their first $10,000 as a turning point that felt almost disproportionately significant relative to the number. Not because 10,000 changes your life materially, it does not, but because it changes the story you tell yourself about who you are financially. And that story, once rewritten, is remarkably durable. People who have proved to themselves that they can build something tend to keep building. The momentum is psychological before it is financial, and the psychological momentum, it turns out, is the harder and more important thing to create. There is also a mathematical inflection point around this level that starts to become meaningful. $10,000 properly invested at a reasonable long-term return starts generating a few $100s a year in gains without any additional contribution from you. That is still small, but it is real. It is money working without you. It is the first faint signal of the engine turning over, and as you keep contributing on top of that growing base, the compounding starts to become visible in a way it simply could not when the base was $400. The $28 per year becomes $60, then $200, then $1,000, then more, not because your contributions changed, but because the base grew, and every step of that growth was funded by the grinding, invisible, psychologically brutal work you did to get to $10,000 in the first place. The difficulty of the early stage is not a tax on your ambition. It is the foundation of everything that compounds on top of it. So here is what I want you to walk away with today. The first $10,000 is hard because the math is slow, and the compounding is absent, and the present bias is loud, and the social cost is real, and the sacrifice feels enormous relative to the result. Every single one of those things is real. None of them mean you are doing it wrong. All of them are temporary. The grinding phase ends. The compounding phase begins, and the distance between those two phases is measured entirely in how consistently you protect your savings rate while you are still in the hard part. If this conversation resonated with you, if it made the early savings journey feel less like a personal failure and more like a phase with a known shape and a known end, then please consider subscribing. This is exactly the kind of honest, unfiltered financial conversation I make here. No shortcuts, no hype, just the real mechanics of how money works and how to build something lasting from wherever you are starting. Hit subscribe and stay in the conversation. And if you want to understand one of the biggest silent forces draining your savings without you even realizing it, the next video is made exactly for that. We are talking about how social media is quietly making you broke. The psychological manipulation, the hidden spending triggers, the specific techniques built into the apps you use every day to move money out of your pocket and into someone else's revenue stream. It is one of the most eye-opening financial conversations I have had on this channel. It is right there on your screen. Click it now. I will see you in the next one.